Well, it is a Christmas Eve episode here on the Buckeye Breakdown Podcast. Anthony Moeglin running solo today as we get everybody set up for what's hopefully going to be a very Merry Christmas and leading into the end of holiday season. Excited to be back with you here on the Buckeye Breakdown Podcast here on the Buckeyes Roundtable YouTube channel. A lot's happened since we've been with you last. Hope you enjoy my I got a little Christmas sweater on, and funny enough, grab my Rose Bowl hat. Brought back great memories of this time last year when we were prepping to get out to the Rose Bowl. But the Ohio State Buckeyes are all set for their matchup with the Miami Hurricanes in the Cotton Bowl down in Dallas on New Year's Day. As we get going here, as folks start jumping in, reminder, get into that comment section. Let me know what you think, what's going on. We'll turn this into a conversation if more folks jump in here. If you're catching us live, awesome. Appreciate it. Love going live in these formats. If you're catching us after, maybe you're setting up the tree, maybe Santa's on his way, or whatever the case may be. Really appreciate you jumping in. Want to call this out here before we get going. We got a little bit of a QR code up in the top. I guess it's the right-hand corner to me, probably I think the left-hand corner to you, but regardless, it's over underneath my hand. I'm going to actually pull this down here so that you can see it. Hit that QR code, and you're going to be able to see. I'm going to take you right here. It's going to take you right to our roundtable page. It's as easy as it gets. You hit that QR code, you wait a couple seconds, and then bang, you're right on Buckeyes Roundtable. You're seeing all of our stories, getting all of our content. It's that easy. Go in there, make an account. It takes about 4 seconds to make an account. Put your name in there and put your email address in there. It costs you $0. Probably costs you about 2 minutes of work to get over to Roundtable, but it's a really cool, it's a unique experience. Think about it as like a Twitter-like message board with premium stories that you could even write. You could get in there and jot your thoughts down, get some views yourself. It's a really neat place. So get over there, hit that QR code, and get over to Buckeyes Roundtable there and check us all out. But I think by the time, I guess since we talked last time we got on YouTube here was right as Miami went final against Texas A&M, and that game ended in crazy fashion when Marcel Reed throws the pick on the 2-yard line going in to tie the football game up. And after that, the rest of that Saturday was like snooze fest all throughout. It was a beatdown between Ole Miss and Tulane, a game that like wasn't even close. Like I remember I was doing a bunch of content for our site, and by the time I turned the game on the TV and really started focusing on it, it was already 14-0. It was like midway through the first quarter. I was like, what are we even doing here? And then the late night game, JMU, they got blown out, but the fight they had in the second half, I thought personally was awesome, right? I thought it was absolutely fantastic that they kept battling and trying to make that one close. They end up covering the spread, but they give up a 50-burger to Oregon. And there's going to be a major conversation, in my opinion, anywhere you listen to your content or get your content. Folks have been talking about, what some changes could be to the format. I do think, unfortunately, you have to get the G5s out of there. Like, and people reference some of the big-time blowouts that you see from, we've seen in the past from Power 4, Power 5 teams when they're playing each other. Imagine those teams, I think back to that Georgia 66-7 win over TCU, or even some of our Ohio State wins last year against Oregon. Imagine that Ohio State team last year catching JMU or catching Tulane. Like, they were going to put up 80 points on those guys. So there's going to be a conversation to be had about that. We'll have that at another time. What I do want to talk about is just the quarterfinals in general, quarterfinals at large, and then we'll dive into our game. But Ohio State kicks it off against Miami on New Year's Eve, right? It's that 7:30 kick in Dallas. Will be a fun one. We'll get into those storylines later. But coming our way on New Year's Day, it's a loaded slate. It's Oregon and Texas Tech to get things started, and I believe that is that's the Orange Bowl. So they're down in Miami in the Orange Bowl. And I think that game's that game has a lot of intrigue on my side of things. Oregon really has been tested one time. Well, no, that's untrue. Oregon's been tested several times. They've been tested by Indiana. They had a tough win against Iowa down in Kinnick, and a tough win against Penn State before Penn State fell off. They were like they pushed Penn State off the cliff, if you will. So they've been in these crazy environments against really good teams. On the flip side of things, Texas Tech hasn't really seen anything. The Texas Tech's Big 12 schedule was, it was as easy as it gets. Like their two hardest wins, both came against BYU in a game that in the Big 12 championship game they won by four plus scores. They really have not been tested. They haven't been tested, for a full team's perspective. They haven't been tested by the athletes that they're going to get out of the Oregon Ducks, and they're led by Dante Moore at quarterback. That is the Ducks, and he's playing at such a high level, and he's showing that hey, he's competing to be a first round pick. A top 5 pick if he does elect to go to the NFL draft. And maybe if you are watching the show and you are maybe potentially a Cleveland Browns fan, you're going to know that name, Dante Moore, here coming more as they get set for the draft if he decides to declare. On Texas Tech side, they are built on their defense. Their defense is elite. Is it elite because they're really, really good, or is it elite because they're playing in a Big 12 where maybe the competition isn't as great? But all in all, that's going to be an awesome game to get New Year's Day kicked off. Currently, as it sits right now, Oregon is 1.5 point favorite, so they are calling this one damn near a pick 'em in this game, and I think that will be that's going to be a lot of fun. That's going to be a really fun game to get things going on New Year's Day to start out the 2026 year, and then we go back to where Ohio State was last year at this time, out to the Rose Bowl, the granddaddy of them all in Pasadena, between the Indiana Hoosiers and the Alabama Crimson Tide. I think this game has the potential to be a really awesome football game. I think Indiana is every bit they're every bit the best team in the country, and they're going to fight to prove that here in a couple weeks. Alabama on the flip side, I thought Oklahoma was potentially going to beat them. I thought Alabama was going to struggle a little bit in that game, which they did. They're down 17-0, and then they get that punter inexplicably dropping that punt attempt, and you're like, what in the hell is going on here? They capitalize on it. They then go and turn and run the score up a little bit and win that football game by 10 points. And it sets up what should be an awesome Rose Bowl between two teams who have really legit quarterbacks. I think Ty Simpson on the Bama side is up and down. I think when he's hot, he's hot. And when he's down, when he's cold, he's super low and doesn't play good football. Mendoza on the other side, I just love everything about that kid. Like just being a football nerd, a football junkie. Like I think Fernando Mendoza brings everything to the table. He's got the build you want. 6'5". He's big. He's strong. He's tough as nails. Right. We see. I'm always going to reference that hit he took at the hands of Caden Curry. Nothing dirty about it. Nothing bad and malicious about it. Boom. He takes it, gets back up, and leads Indiana to a win against the Ohio State Buckeyes. He can make every throw in the book. He can move enough in the pocket. He's athletic enough to make things happen. I think he's very, very special. And that Indiana team, just as a whole, is just they have the personality of their head coach. They're tough as shit, and they're a team you don't really want to face in these scenarios. I think this game is going to be back and forth. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Both of these teams are going to go at it, and they're going to get each other's best efforts. And I think it's going to be a fairly close game. Right now, as it sits, Alabama. Jeez, oh man, maybe I'll get this one right. Indiana is 6.5 point favorites against the Crimson Tide. And that over-under is at 48. So a little bit on the lower side, potentially calling for a little bit of a more so a defensive battle there out in Pasadena. But regardless, it's always amazing to watch that game. That one is the one where, everyone's sitting down, whether you're a football fan or not, you're watching the flyover, you're seeing the beautiful scenes of the mountains and the Rose Bowl and the perfect grass and the perfect paint. It's going to be really cool to see those two teams face off. And I'm certainly excited to see that. And then that sets up the nightcap. Ole Miss versus Georgia, an SEC battle, a game where the Georgia Bulldogs, whoever wins this game is going to get the right to play against either Ohio State or Miami in the semifinal. And as it sits right now, Vegas is calling for a little bit tighter of a game than maybe I'm expecting. They're calling for Georgia to be 6.5 point favorites. I think Georgia's well over a touchdown better than this Ole Miss team. I think Ole Miss is a touch inflated for what they showed against Tulane. They took care of business against Tulane. They did what they had to do against Tulane. But I do think that Georgia's going to be a different ballgame for the Ole Miss Rebels. And I think it will be tough. Trinidad is going to get challenged in ways that he hasn't been challenged really all year. And he's going to have an opportunity to go out there and do it. When these two teams met in mid-October. Georgia got the better of Ole Miss 43-35. I do think that Georgia has gotten consistently better throughout the year, and hopeful that if we do play them next week, or if we get the opportunity to play them in the semifinals, I think that could be a really big barn burner of a game. But as that game sits at 6.5 point spread, I do think Georgia is potentially a little bit better than maybe what they're getting credit for. I think that there's some value in that line as it sits right now. But flipping this thing back to New Year's Eve, the 2003 National Championship rematch is set. I know I had a reaction show where we talked about it for about 15 minutes on Saturday, but gotten so much more time to think back and digest exactly what's going to be happening for the Ohio State Buckeyes and the Miami Hurricanes on New Year's Eve in Dallas. And it's so exciting. Like, it's funny. I've written a couple stories about it over on Roundtable, so get over there, check them out, read them. And just thinking back to that game and to this, I'm calling it a rivalry. This is the fifth time. This is just the fifth time that these two teams have played each other in this storied career. The 2003 game was the second time that they played. And then they played a home and home, and I believe it was 2010, 2011. And they haven't played ever since. Like, these are two teams that are in the fabric of college football history. These are two teams that you cannot tell the story of college football without. And they've only played each other 4 times, which is just shocking to me. And so many of the names that write the story of college football and pro football have come through Columbus, have come through Miami to get to where they've gone and to write the script of what we know as the game of football. And I just can't get over the fact that they've only played 5 times. And obviously, everyone watching this show and everyone seeing this show is going to remember that 2003 national championship in Tempe, Arizona, where the Buckeyes, 11.5 point dogs in that game, just fought and fought and fought and fought. May have caught a break at the end, but fought and fought and fought and fought, and just never gave up until they had more points than the Miami Hurricanes in that second overtime. And like, thinking back on that season, right? I was just a puppy when that was going on. I was just a 5-year-old, so I don't really remember it. But I was reading back on a lot of stuff, and like, man, Ohio State dodged so many bullets that year. That was the year, that was the Holy Buckeye year when they beat Purdue 7-6, and they only beat Cincinnati, who's in the UT or was in they were in the Big East. Yeah, they were in the Big East maybe at the time, or maybe even before then. They beat them by 5 points in that year. So they weren't killing teams. And meanwhile, Miami was on a 34-game win streak when that season ended, and they had legitimately 6 NFL Hall of Famers on their roster. They were loaded. There was NFL talent everywhere. They were so good. It was such for as much of a David versus Goliath you could get out of a 1 versus 2. It was that game. And going back and watching it and seeing Maurice Clarett just kind of do his thing, and seeing Craig Krenzel make some mistakes but just continue to fight. And first and foremost, like, the style of football is so much different. That's the way the dudes looked, like their shoulder pads were big and all that stuff was funny to watch. But like, just the way that the Buckeyes fought in that game was something. And they obviously come out on top of it. And this is exactly what this is exactly how Ohio State approached that game, is exactly how Miami is going to try to approach this game. And I do think that they're going to carry that little chip on their shoulder where like nobody's giving them a chance, and they are these major underdogs where they are they're going to try to fight and have to scratch and claw to win this football game. And it's going to potentially have that personality. It's just really cool to see these two logos match up again, to see these two brands match up again, and to do it in Dallas, right? It's going to be an amazing environment. And that rematch in that game is going to be a special one, and one that everybody's going to be checked in on, because ultimately we just spent 10 minutes talking about it before that. This is going to be, the quarterfinals are all going to be close games in my opinion. I'll get to my pick later, or probably later in the week we'll do picks, but like, I do think Ohio State is potentially going to win this football game, but I do think all these games are going to be super close. And I think people are yearning for that, right? When we talk about these playoffs, we get 3 blowouts in the first round, and you're like, dang, like I wish it would have been a little. Well, you get 2 blowouts, and then that Miami Texas A&M game. But I do think people are craving and yearning for a little bit of better competition, and I think you're going to get that. So I think everyone's going to be locked in on this one, and it's going to be a football game that it's going to feel nostalgic in many ways when it starts, and then it's going to look like an amazing football game. In my opinion, I'm excited for it. But kind of getting into the details of what this game is going to look like. I wrote a piece that literally just went live at 2:00, and one that I was really excited about because I do think that these football games, when you get into the playoffs, and think about it from every level of football, right? If you coach your son's, peewee football at home, or you remember back to the high school days when you got into the playoffs, or if you played in college and you did play maybe at a smaller division like I did, and you do have these playoff football games, or you watch some of these NFL quarterbacks play. Maybe you're in the NFL, you're watching. If you are, sick, that'd be awesome. But you watch these NFL quarterbacks play, and every time you get into a playoff game, it always comes down to the quarterback, right? Their quarterback probably gets too much of the blame at times and probably gets too much of the credit at times. But in the playoffs, people remember what the quarterback did in the most critical situations. I can think back to a couple playoff games that I personally won where it looked like, hey, I played really well, and I made a big throw late in the game to change the game, or made a big completion on 3rd and 10 to keep a drive alive. I'm like, hell yeah. I can also remember the 3 playoff games that I lost where I threw an interception, or I made a critical error in the end zone, or I did something wrong where it's like, hey, the quarterback has the ball in his hands and he makes that mistake. And that's what everyone remembers. And that leads you to, all right, what this game ultimately could boil down to, which quarterback plays better? Is it Carson Beck, who is in his 6th year of college, or is it the 19-year-old kid, Julian Sayin, who's playing in his first college football playoff game? And I just thought of this, like, Carson Beck, from an experience standpoint, right? It feels like he's a guy who's obviously been there for 6 years in college. But yeah, he had more experience. No, this will be his 2nd college football playoff game. And you're like, all right, well, this will be Julian's first. So there's not much difference there. But when you see these two kids, you see these two guys playing football, I look at Julian, and, I see a guy who passed almost every single test this year. He came out against Texas, was facing the number 1 team in the country, and that was his first ever start as an Ohio State Buckeyes quarterback. And he had to go get that win, pass the test. Then he goes on his first road game against Washington in a hostile environment on the other side of the country, goes there, plays well, wins the football game. Then has his first chance at playing Michigan, goes to Michigan, starts slow, responds and gets better and wins the football game. And you're like, he's checking all these boxes. And then he gets to his biggest test against Indiana in what is technically a postseason game. That's technically a postseason game, and comes up short. Statistically, he was good, 21 of 29 for 258, a score and an interception. But when you watch the football game, he made 2 critical errors, right? Ohio State got inside the 10-yard line twice, and on the first one, 4th and 1, they QB sneak it. He slips, puts his knee down, turnover on downs. The second one, 3rd and 2, has a nicely designed rollout to the right, has Bo Jackson in the flat, gets gun shy, doesn't pull the trigger, throws it back over the middle a little bit late. It's tipped away. They missed the kick, and the rest is history there. And it's like, okay, you have to grow from those decisions. That was the first test you didn't pass. And the way I view that is like an incredible opportunity for him to grow from that, right? That's an amazing opportunity for him to say, oh, here's where I need to get better. And here's how I'm going to get better for games that are going to be do or die. And I think he's got the potential to grow from that. On the other side of things, you look at Carson Beck, and man alive, like, just got away by the skin of his teeth last week against Texas A&M. I mean, he's a guy who's been around the block, who's been on some good Georgia teams, kind of cost his Georgia teams chances at the postseason, and comes to Miami and gets a blessing to even get into the college football playoff. And then in his first game goes 14 of 20 for 103 yards and a score. And you're like, man, he just didn't look good, didn't look comfortable. The conditions were tough. It was windy as heck. And it was really hard for him, but it was like, got in there and just like felt like he didn't take advantage of his opportunity. And I've talked about it in a couple different stories that I've written. When you look at Miami's losses this year, there are 2 losses, one to Louisville and one to SMU. The Louisville loss, he threw 4 interceptions on the day, and the one they were driving to go take a lead in that game to go win it, and he throws it. They were in plus territory, almost in field goal range, and he throws an interception. You're like, that can't happen. He threw 4 of them on the day. Against SMU, He throws 2 interceptions. One of them was in overtime. It was one of the first or second, or it was on that first drive of overtime. They get down towards the red zone, the end zone, and he throws a pick and costs him the football game. And it's like, hey, turning the football over is going to cost you, and you're going to have to protect it against Ohio State. You're also going to have to look so much better than you did against Texas A&M. Because if you're going to sit there and tell me that, hey, we played Texas A&M's defense, who's maybe not the same level as Ohio State, and I say that facetiously, definitely not at the same level as Ohio State, and we could only score 10 points on them. And we're going to say, hey, offense, against Ohio State next week, we're going to give you 10 points, maybe less than that. That's not a good proposition if you're the Miami Hurricanes. And Carson Beck is going to need to be much, much better for Miami if they want to get that done. So I do envision this game, and I see this game as a tale of 2 quarterbacks. Which quarterback is going to show up? Are we going to get Julian Sayin, who responds to adversity, who makes the good plays, who is surgically accurate? Or are we going to get the Julian that came alive in that Indiana game, where in critical situations, GTHI's got to have it scenarios, he came up short? And then on the other side, are we going to get Carson Beck, who's out there free-flowing, ripping that thing around the field, or are we going to get Carson Beck, who's inaccurate, making bad decisions to turn the football over? Whichever one of those guys we get, as I think is going to determine the outcome of the game. I think there's so many external factors to that as well. I think both teams are very good on defense. I think that this Miami defense is going to be right on par with the Indiana defense that Ohio State's faced. Since Miami lost to SMU, it was on November 1st when they lost to SMU. They're averaging 176 yards given up on the year, which is actually, and that's 5-game sample size, and that's actually 1 yard better than what Indiana's doing, and they're doing it on both sides. They are led. The engine of that defense, similar to Ohio State, is their defensive line. Their defensive line has a few stars on it, and it's going to be a handful for Ohio State's offensive line, who's kind of going through a little bit of change there, especially on that right side of the Ohio State defensive line. And then their secondary has been solid. They've only given up 2 touchdown passes in the last month and a half of the season in those last 5 games. And obviously the play of the year was last week against Texas A&M, when A&M had the ball down inside the 5-yard line. Marcel Reed drops back to pass. He throws it, and it gets picked off by the Hurricanes in the end zone to seal the deal. And you're like, yeah, like those guys are there. They can challenge receivers. They can do everything that Ohio State truly hasn't really seen to this point in terms of defenses. On the year, Miami ranks as the 3rd best defense that Ohio State's faced in terms of yards given up. Indiana was the best. Penn State was the 2nd best, and then Miami falls in there. I know there's so many more different categories. My head can only fit so much information in it. So we just looked at yards for our story today. We're going to get more into the details of some of that situational stuff as we get closer to the game. But it's a good defense, and Ohio State is going to be one of the biggest tests that Ohio State's had to face. And conversely, Ohio State's offense is by far and away the best test that Miami's going to have to face this year. The second one was Notre Dame. And they got the gift of doing that in August when they played the Irish in week 1. And they really haven't been tested since. So it's going to be a big challenge for the Miami defense against the Ohio State offense. It's also going to be, a challenge for the Buckeyes on offense to try to attack this Miami defense, because I do think that Indiana exposed some things about the Buckeyes that Miami's going to try to take advantage of. So there's so much more to get into. We're going to get into a lot of those details as we get closer to the football game. But for now, media availability started earlier in the week. And the Buckeyes took to the podium, and there's some really, really good stuff. Ryan Day had just a really good press conference. If you haven't seen it yet, get out from under the rock you live under, but go check it out. It's not on our YouTube channel. You can go find it anywhere else you get your Buckeye content. But basically talked about how this Buckeyes team is just pissed off. Like, that's what he just kept saying. Like, they're pissed off. They felt they shouldn't have lost that game to Indiana. They did. And they felt that they let one kind of slip away, and it's really re-energized them and refocused them a little bit. And they have a really pissed off attitude, which is a very scary scenario for anyone on the other side of that. This is old news at this point, but Day also talked about how he's going to be calling plays for the playoff run. Kind of felt inevitable, especially with how poorly Ohio State was prepared to play Indiana, and what they were doing just felt so weird and dumb. And it felt like the guy running the show was not totally focused on preparing for it, which is the case. Brian Hartline is a head coach now. And at the time of that Indiana game, he had just got announced as that. So Day's going to step in, and it's still going to be a collaborative effort he talked about, but he's going to make the final call. This has no information behind it. This is pure speculation on my part. I would not be shocked if in a book in 10 years when Ryan Day talks about this team, we come to find that, he's been calling plays for at least a little bit or has had his hand very deeply in that cookie jar, both this year and last year. It's felt like he's had a major influence on it, and he finally publicly came out and said it that, hey, for at least the rest of this season, this postseason run, that he's going to be calling the play. So pretty cool stuff there. And the last two times that he made that switch, I'm going to get these dates wrong, but it was the 2020 game against Clemson where, or maybe it's 2021 game against Clemson where Justin Fields threw for like 400 yards. The Buckeyes scored almost 50 points against Clemson, beat the brakes off of them. And then that other one was the 2022 Georgia game where C.J. Stroud and the boys fell short just a touch to Georgia, 42-41 in that game where C.J. was ripping around all over the field. Day took play calling over in those games and had his foot on the gas pedal from Jump Street, which is exactly what the Buckeyes need when he's calling the, making the play calls come next Wednesday night in Dallas. So really cool stuff there. Jeremiah Smith he looks like a man possessed right now. Just like he looked like he wanted to take the microphone and just break the whole thing. He looked angry at the world. He's excited to get things going. He's got a little bit of a presence on social media right now too, where, he's tweeting stuff out and letting the world know that he's ready to rock and roll for this playoff run. And he was talking about, it's really interesting. He's got a great perspective on this. He went to high school 30 minutes away from the campus in Miami, and he's lived this life, and he was supposed to be the next coming for that community, for this team that they're playing. And he's now kind of viewed as the traitor. I mean, people are calling him Judas on the, speaking of Christmas, people are calling him Judas because he traded against the Miami Hurricanes. He was supposed to be that next coming, and he's obviously an Ohio State Buckeye. So his welcome home anymore, it probably isn't as sweet as it would be if he was a Hurricane. But nonetheless, he talked about, and his big kind of comments were that Miami's been talking about that 2003 game now for 20 years. They can't get over it. And he's like, man, it's 20 years ago. Made a comment like, we got another thing coming for you guys on New Year's Eve. So he's fired up about it. Caden McDonald said something similar. Hard to believe. I wrote a piece on Caden today, which I encourage you to go read because he's just had an incredible year. He's named an All-American. He's been just kind of an unsung hero, a guy that no one really expected to take the leap that he did, but he did it anyway. And it has really been a key component of this Buckeyes team. He talked about, he's like, all right, screw it, whatever you got for me, bring it, because we're gonna be answering it and bringing it right back to you. So he was really excited. Sonny Styles had a lot of good comments to be made. We didn't hear from Caleb Downs yet, hadn't heard from Julian Sayans, so some of those other guys will get their chance at the podium here in the next couple days. But really good stuff there. And then on the flip side, Mario Cristobal took to the podium on Monday as well, and he had some really good stuff to say about the Buckeyes. So I encourage you all to go check it out. It's all of that stuff is all over on the site, so jump over there, find stories. They're scattered throughout. A lot of good stuff here as we begin prep for that game next week. So wrapping up our show today, we're gonna have a little bit of fun. It obviously 'tis the season, right? Got my sweater on, I got my coat on. If you're catching us live, awesome. I'm getting ready for some holiday celebrations here myself. Getting into a little Christmas Eve action tonight and into tomorrow. Got the gifts around the tree and all that stuff. So first and foremost, just want to say a quick thank you. If you've made it certainly this far in the video today, we got a decent crowd in here. Just want to say thanks so much. I personally love doing this. This is the end of my second full season on the team, and just absolutely love doing this type of stuff. I hope that it comes through in my videos, but can't do it without you guys. Can't do it without you watching. Can't do it without you reading. And hopefully you get even a little bit out of the content. I'm going to continue to try to improve it. But just want to say a real thank you from me to you for sticking around and watching all of our stuff. And as you get to celebrate families, if you're watching me while you're setting up presents or whatever it is, hope you enjoy it, right? Everyone deserves this time of the year. It's the best time of the year, and enjoy it with your friends, family, and loved ones here. So as we make this about Ohio State. I did this the other night on another show that I do here on the Roundtable channel, but thought it was really cool and thought maybe it might make sense to talk about it here. So what's one Christmas miracle that I wish for our Ohio State Buckeyes? Miracle is probably the wrong word for Ohio State. They're in a situation where they kind of create their own luck at this point. We were talking about it in context of an NFL show, so a lot more luck is needed for those NFL teams. But I think for Ohio State, man, this, specifically about, let's talk about this Miami game. My Christmas wish for Ohio State is that they come out like really fast, like against Miami. Like that's what I want from them. Like they're a better team than Miami. But we saw this last year when Ohio State went to went to the Rose Bowl, and Oregon had like a month off, and they came out sluggish. They came out slow. They came out like they hadn't played competitive football in a month. And I just want Ohio State to get to that game on next week, and they're going to have all the motivation. They're going to be hyped up, but don't lose that competitive edge. They talked about it. I meant to bring this up in the section above, but they talked about how they've been trying to really ramp up that competitive aspect of it. It's so hard. These guys in these NFL seasons and these college football seasons become such a creature of habit where every day is scripted, and you get your body kind of going throughout the week where you feel bad on Monday, and then you get a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better. And then by Saturday, you're war ready. And then you drop back down. You do it week after week after week, and you get your mindset to like, all right, on Mondays between 6 and 10, I got to do my schoolwork. And on Tuesdays from 8 to 7 p.m., it's all football or whatever it is. It gets all thrown off in this time of the year because now you're playing on a Wednesday next week and you're doing all this stuff. I hope, and they've shown me nothing but the ability to be mature, to be businessmen, to be professional about all this stuff. And it's obviously led by Ryan Day. But my wish for them is that they come out against Miami and they don't look sluggish. If they don't look sluggish and they look ready and well prepared to play, man, this could get into boat race territory. And that's kind of what I'm thinking about. Obviously get through it healthy and get through it, get through this first game and looking good, doing the right things and getting set up for what's going to be a fun potentially semifinal matchup in Phoenix, leading up to a national championship repeat potential down in Miami. So appreciate everybody jumping in. What a fun show here as we hit you on Christmas Eve. So much content available for you. We don't stop just because we're celebrating. The page is going to be full today, and it'll be full tomorrow with all brand new content there. And then we're going to get back into rhythm here as we get through this week. And then we're going to have boots on the ground in Dallas next week. So make sure you're following along. You're tapped in. All things Buckeyes on Buckeyes Roundtable here. And a reminder, I'm going to put it up in the top corner here again. Hit that QR code. There's some new faces in here from when we did it last time. If you're watching on Twitter, thank you. If you're watching on YouTube, use your phone. Hit that QR code. It's going to take you directly to the site. It'll take you directly to the website. It takes 2 seconds to make an account. Make an account. Put your email in. Follow me. We ask $0. We don't bug you with anything. We just send you good stories about your Buckeyes that we think you want to read. So make sure you hit that. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you like what we're doing. If you don't like what we're doing, don't subscribe and tell me about it. Tell me how bad or what we need to change. But all in all, wish everybody a happy holiday season. Merry Christmas if you celebrate it. Happy Hanukkah. Happy Kwanzaa to all who celebrate. Just a general happy holidays to everybody. And this is a fun year. As we get set for Ohio State and Miami next week down in Dallas, and we got you covered. So make sure you're tapped in, locked in on all things Buckeyes on the Buckeye Breakdown Podcast on the Buckeye Roundtable YouTube channel.